Today, it's an honor to have Ranveer Chandra, who's a vice president of Microsoft, working on Copilots. Distinguished computer scientist and technologist at Microsoft. He serves as vice president of Copilot Tuning, CTO of Agriculture and Food, and several other sort of initiatives at Microsoft. He leads a team of AI scientists and engineers into sectors that move the real world, right? From cloud to connectivity to food and farming. And we'd love to hear what he's been up to more recently. In today's episode, we want to dive a little bit deeper into agentic AI systems that don't, just sort of predict or tell you how to do something, but actually do things for you. So we'll unpack the build versus buy dilemma a little bit that developers are facing, and confusion of too many frameworks and agent platforms, and ask which industries, from healthcare, logistics, and construction, finance, retail, agriculture, many of the things that Ranveer formerly worked on at Microsoft, stand to benefit the most today from agentic AI. And we'll also, sort of go into the deeper question. What does it take for an agent to go from research and R&D mode into reality and into production? Ranveer, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, great to be here, Anirudh. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah. So, the first thing that we wanted to understand was, what is Copilot fine-tune, right? So why is it important and where are people using it?
Yeah, so Copilot Tuning, it's the product that I'm leading right now. It's a product to make Copilot your own. Copilot is not like electricity. You can make it your own by bringing your own data, your own workflows to it and customizing it. So, with Copilot, it's basically the UI for AI. Right now for Microsoft, that's what Copilot is. If you think of AI, it's all of these agents that could be doing their own work. And with Copilot, it's the AI interface to all the agents that exist. And as we are doing that with Copilot Tuning, we personalize the models behind Copilot, the orchestration behind Copilot, the memory, the data, all of that behind Copilot in a very privacy preserving, in a compliant way so that data stays within the compliant boundary. And we'd work with different enterprises so that you can then customize these models based on their data, their workflows, the way they talk, the way they think, the way they work. And we use that to build what we call the enterprise brain that will power every enterprise's Copilot experience to make it even more effective in what they do.
That's very exciting. So the Copilot, the product itself is integrated into several different of Microsoft platforms. How does that translate into the enterprise brain? Is that something that it automatically learns, or is that something that you have to go as a sort of customer, that you have to go and tell it, hey, here's all the things that you need to learn? How do you sort of make it sort of available in terms of, hey, this is what you need to learn, this is what you need to sort of be careful of, this is what you need to sort of surface?
So I'll tell you, I'll give the answer in two parts. One, where we are now, and one where I think we should go. It's not that we will go there. Where we are now is we allow customers, as they are building agents, these are task specific agents. For every agent, the customer can then give an idea of how they do things. Where is the data, what they do, how they do it. They don't have to give all the information in. They point us to the data. And then we use that to tune the model. Of course, that is where we are now. If you ask me, where will you be a year, 2 years from now? I don't think we want to make it just on agents. We want every experience to be personalized so that that's what will bring the best benefit of AI to every enterprise. And some of this comes from, the agriculture work we had worked on. We did a lot of work on agriculture and building the data, using AI to build the insights, and the FarmVibes.ai work that your team built just still ranked number 2 on GitHub in agriculture and food. But all that said, one of the things that I think one of our learnings was that you can bring all of this data, you can create insights, but unless you personalize it, it won't bring the value. Like, you can go and tell the farmer that apply this fertilizer, but if it's an expensive fertilizer and the farmer is under debt, it doesn't make any sense to give that kind of recommendation. You have to take the conditions, the data, what the farmer's done before, what they're going to do after, and tune the model so that you can personalize the advice. And that's something that's going to happen across the board for every enterprise. You can think of a CPG company, a retail company, a finance company, a healthcare company. They do things a certain way. If you've trained something on all the data on the internet and you go tell a company, it doesn't make much sense for them. They cannot use it unless it is in the context of what they do, how they do it. Of course, you can try a little bit of it through context engineering that takes you a certain way, but that's not enough. And that's where beyond that is what we bring in through Copilot Tuning.
Makes a lot of sense. A lot of our viewers are familiar with, Microsoft Copilot. I just wanted to, sort of refresh everybody what we do at Adopt, right? So we bring legacy applications, on-prem applications, any third-party website that your sort of company depends on to Copilot, right? So, you have a Copilot or you have a Copilot from somewhere else, or you have a chatbot that you're building internally, and you want to have capabilities of a particular application within this. That's what Adopt does. Essentially, what Ranveer mentioned earlier was, it's not just about the general knowledge of how things are and how things work, but it's about the capability of, hey, I need to be able to do this. I need to be able to, sort of do something like this. And that is where I think, what we do as Adopt is, you have a platform that you're relying on, for essentially, sort of some sort of capabilities. For instance, you mentioned agriculture. So if that needs to have plugin into when the sprinklers need to fire on your farm, then that's a platform capability that we can bring in. And if there is a platform that says, hey, here's all the capabilities of the sprinklers, and that plugs into the Copilot, and the Copilot brings in knowledge about agriculture and other sort of essential things that are required for running an automatic farm, and we bring in the capabilities, right? So from here, what I wanted to understand was, the world is quickly moving from asking how to do something versus, hey, go do this for me. How are various industries bridging this gap? What are the key, sort of gaps that you're seeing from, industry standpoint, from capability standpoint, model standpoint, that, that we as a community need to be, sort of focusing more on?
So this is happening more and more. This is the evolution of AI, and we'll see more and more of that happen. We are starting with some of the simpler tasks being automated. Things like you keep doing that task repeatedly over and over again. It's something that AI can learn and quickly do. Some of the more complicated ones are like, things like a customer service call or handling tickets and things like that. These are things that are repeatable. We know we can do it, and AI can do a pretty good job. And those are the initial places things are getting adopted. Moving forward, it's a lot of the other more sophisticated tasks are also getting, the time to do it is getting compressed. A lot of the processes behind it are getting automated, but it is still a human in the loop. And I think that is good. You are seeing that happen. More and more people are adopting it. And that's one trend that we are seeing. And a human in the loop does two things. One is, of course, contextualize it, but the other thing is also setting the direction of what should happen with that. And, this goes around Microsoft's vision of the frontier firm. So one of the things we're talking about, which was released in the Work Trend Index that we announced in April, that we released in April, we talked about the frontier firm going about it in three phases. The first phase, where we are in now, mostly, we call into agents who do the work and give it back to us. Like, people tell ChatGPT, hey, write this report, and it'll come back with a report, which you then consume. But that is where we are now, right? Most of the time it's on demand. You just call it and you get back the response. Very soon, what we're going to see is the phase two of the frontier firm, where it's not just in your group, you'll have these AI agents doing some of the work for you, and they complete the job, whatever they are given. Think of it like an AI program manager who's just keeping track of what's going to happen when, and it's doing the entire job. And this is my prediction is pretty soon you'll start seeing this. And then, but that's not it itself. Phase three is where every employee will become an agent boss. They will have a group of agents that they'll manage to do the job. The agent boss, the human, is going to set the directions, set the expectations of what needs to be done. And the group of agents should go and get the job done and come back. Like, I could give an example. For example, suppose you're in a CPG company running sustainable farming. Just going back to a farming example, because we worked on that before together, right? So suppose they want to run a sustainability program. You could have phase one is where you could, individually call an agent, hey, get me the satellite data. The another agent, do the report based on this, compute what the sustainability metrics are. A second level agent, you could go and run a program and say, okay, find out like there could be another sustainability manager agent that will find all the farms and come up with a report on advisory metrics of what's happening in that farm. But in stage 3, you just set your goals. I want X% sustainability metrics or sustainable farming across, like the products that land on shelves should be grown sustainably in X% of farms. Go run that program. And the set of agents, someone will come up with the sustainability metrics, another will go do the procurement, come up with training for farmers, another will set up a program, and they'll all come with periodic human review of what that could be. This is just an example of how every firm around us will get agentic, and they will all move towards this vision of a frontier firm. And towards that, these agents will start seeing more and more of the work done. Right now, most enterprises with the use of AI is still in phase 1. Many of them will be getting to phase 2 quickly, but I think the next milestone for us will be phase 3.
Well, this phase 3 sounds very exciting. Just one question there, how do you hold such agents accountable? Like, they have a lot of agency, by their, definition. They're thinking a lot. They could be doing things that they're not supposed to do, or they could be doing things not the right way. Is there something that, you could teach them? Right now, large language models and their interfaces are largely ossified, right? There's no learning on the fly. But we as sort of humans, we assume that when we bring in somebody into the team, it's a long process, right? Initially they start off as entry level engineers, but over time they grow to staff level. They're learning a lot on the job. What does that look like in the agent space?
I think the same thing will happen with agents. The rate at which AI innovation is happening, these models are not going to be static. And that's one of the things where capabilities that tuning will needs to have. The ability to evolve, the ability to learn, this continual learning concept is critical. I think that's the future. That's the way humans learn. Right now, what we're doing is mostly imitation learning, right? And imitation as in and static in the sense, hey, this is what happened, learn from it. But that's not what the future is going to be. The future, I think, and there are many scientists at play. I know this is not a solved problem, but as people in the AI space, one of the key learnings designing AI products is that you have to bet on the capabilities that will come. Make smart bets on capabilities you expect that's going to come in the next 6 months. And I think one of the capabilities is going to be around continuous learning. You learn things on the fly and update the models. These models won't be static. Yeah, if someone's building a system right now, yes, you have that challenge that the models have learned over time, and then your snapshot is from it some time before. But then you run into a lot of issues about how it did things, and it did not take the latest standards into account and things like that. But I think that won't be the case 6 months down the line.
Speaking of learning, there is so much new content out there, right? Content creation has become easy. Uh, developing new code and tools has become easy. So developers, engineers, everybody across the board is bombarded with a lot of content. Be it new frameworks. Just today, OpenAI announced Agent Kit, right? So there's a new framework on the blog. There's new code projects coming in, released. All the big players are doing it. It's a lot of content being thrown by startups and other entities as well. How does one stay, in tune with all of this? What are you doing personally to, sort of stay abreast with all the news? How does, sort of one even do marketing in this space when people who make important decisions are tuning out content because they see, okay, too much of this is AI generated, like this is not fun.
You need AI to handle this AI. It really is. It's just too much overload, right? And that's just important for us to do. And from our group's perspective too, we are just staying on top by having people whose job it is to try out, to keep looking at things which are top of, like, which are getting released. As they get released, try it out, see if it's better, stay on top of what's happening. There are people who will not be developing products, but just testing things out. Some of it in the future might even be AI driven. But the thing is, you still need humans because they understand what you're trying to build. And that interpretation, they of course use AI to, everyone uses code. AI for coding is like the best product out there, right? So people will use it to do very fast prototyping, but you need such people to be on top of everything that is being announced. And every week there's some big announcement and some really cool products. All of this is really, really amazing innovation happening across the board from every AI company. OpenAI this week. Last week we announced Office Agent and some really cool stuff there. But yeah, if you're a developer, there are, on the one hand, it's so awesome to have so many tools. On the hand, a lot of your tools you just learned last month are out of date.
Absolutely.
They're not the latest stuff. So that needs to be bridged. And in our team, we do this. A lot of small companies, startups will run into this challenge of, hey, what do we do? Right? They cannot afford people to just keep trying things out. I would say make your bets on some infrastructure providers that are doing a good job. I would definitely recommend Microsoft with Copilot Studio and Copilot, Foundry APIs and GitHub Copilot, and a lot of the AI products that we have. I would definitely recommend make a bet on us. We are on top. We are doing that testing for you. Tell us. We are startup friendly. Come work with us. Tell us, hey, give me your results. What are you seeing? What works? What doesn't? Because a lot of times this does require, as you said, a lot of this kind of behind the scenes work on figuring out what are the what are the pros and cons of every tool. When do certain things work well? When do they not? And especially, the bigger thing is it's not just about the tool itself. Of course, for coding, yes, but for many other things, it's about how much of the tools carries over to your customer scenarios. Will it work for the enterprise? Will it work for your customers? And I know I usually don't do sales pitches because I'm not a sales guy, but here, with Microsoft, there's a company I've worked in for so long. We work with a lot of customers. Customers trust us. And there is a lot that we do because of that. There's Anirudh, you were here. You've seen how many things go slow because of compliance reasons. The fact that we have to do things a certain way because our customers want us to do things a certain way. And so, but at the same time, we are moving super fast with AI. I couldn't have thought of any other big company moving as fast as we are. So on the one hand, we are making those bets and taking things to customers, listening to customers, adopting things based on that. So I would definitely recommend startups to think seriously about, hey, what, bet on a big partner. And sometimes you might want to bet on a couple big partners, but that is it. And, after that, add your innovation on top. Operate at a point where, some other large model doesn't take over the IP. You want to be operating in a space where you can keep that differentiation. You keep that moat, which makes the startup even more appealing, right? So that's the place I think startups should invest in.
Speaking of differentiation and modes, we are seeing, sort of, I don't know, should we call it a convergence or something else that is happening, which is many of the LLM providers are now hitting roadblocks in terms of scaling the models and taking them into the next territory, which was supposed to be super intelligence and artificial general intelligence, right? So will we see these large language model designers, providers, just like OpenAI did today, they've developed an agentic kit as opposed to, sort of working on GPT-6, for instance, or super intelligence or artificial general intelligence, right? So is this a sign of the things to come where we're, sort of seeing the limits of LLMs and, sort of we're now going to see another kind of battle, which is, the best agent kit or the best agent developer framework that is out there?
No, I won't say this or that. I would say and that. What we'll see is both. Frontier models will keep coming, and there, if you keep reading the papers, there's just so much innovation happening. Just last week, there was this other paper coming out of China on using RL for pre-training, and there was another Microsoft paper doing something similar. The scope of what's going to happen with these models is just amazing, and I don't expect that to stop. There was this recent podcast with Richard Sutton, and he was talking about RL and RL doing these amazing things, that being the future. Right. He was like, existing LLMs are, this is my interpretation of what he was saying in the podcast. He was basically something that we referred to earlier in this podcast itself, which was that, until now, most of the LLMs are still doing imitation learning, but that's not what humans, that's not the way humans learn.
Mhm.
So how do you be more sample efficient? How do you even try new learning things? Like, a baby just doesn't learn by seeing what others are doing. They try things too. They'll move their hands, they'll flip, they'll do things. They don't see a human flip before they decide to flip. So how do you teach these models to learn is something that people will figure out. So the rate of what I'm saying is that the models will keep getting more and more intelligent. Like, there was this other thing about a lot of these models being book smart. The LLMs right now are book smart, not world smart. So taking them to the next stage with real world models. with looking things around us and doing things around us as opposed to just books. So I think these models are going to see huge amount of innovation. If I look into the future, if you ask me 1 year, 2 years down the line, these models are going to get so powerful. And we have to just be on top of it. Part of my team works on models. They do a lot of new model stuff, which is just, I'm in awe of everything my team does. But at the same time, yeah, what all do you do with the models where all of these capabilities around SDKs and toolkits on top of these models, they're critical because, that's one of the things the models do very well too, help you code and help you develop and help you use these models. So I think we'll see innovations on both of these quite a lot. So I'm not part of the group that says we are saturating in terms of models. When I look around, read papers, I think we are still we're still early. At this point, I would say we've seen the promise. The next few years is when you start seeing a lot more of the model innovations happening as well.
So to the viewers, I actually worked for Microsoft for more than 10 years. Ranveer was my manager there. We worked together on quite a few problems for a long time. One of my sort of favorite sort of problem areas was commercial industry agriculture, to be specific. We did a lot of sort of groundbreaking research. So, the original generative adversarial network work back before generative AI was cool. One of the favorite projects that I had, right? So from that point on to now, where it was more sort of traditional AI and machine learning to generative AI, how has commercial industry adoption changed, and where do you see it going in terms of the industries where margins are super thin traditionally, or because of other reasons like compliance, regulation, security, privacy, it's harder to make inroads, healthcare being one of them, finance being another. How has it changed? Has the new capabilities of LLM shifted the opportunity? And which of the industries do you say are the most to benefit from the breakthroughs in generative AI and large language models?
Yeah, we've seen, and we work together with so many customers, right, on generative AI. At that point, this is pre-Chat GPT. A lot of customers wanted to do something, but they were not as committed. They wanted more value to be seen before they could commit. And a lot of times we ran into this issue of, hey, you're not giving us all the data. How do we do things on top of it and things like that, right? We were building a lot of tools and some of the GAN work and all, we did that with public data, right? All the generative work we were doing and both generative and the GAN work was on public data, drone data we got from farmers. But when you talk to enterprises, they were betting, but not betting as big. Now everyone needs it, right? So now you see that every enterprise is seeing the value. No enterprise wants to be left out. Just 2 weeks back, for example, we announced this thing with Ralph Lauren, which is a very cool app, which is Ask Ralph. I think you might remember this is something that, again, we worked with our industry team, or this is on their website. You can go and say, hey, dress me like Ralph Lauren. I want to go to this dinner party. This is who I am. Tell me what I should be wearing. And this was an app that we released. Pre-Chat GPT days, it was always harder to convince customers to, it would go slower. Now now it's the reverse. It's hard to find any company that doesn't want to move really fast, right? So the demand is there. The thing though is, one part that is different is a lot of the scenarios that we were working on then were mostly focused on customer facing scenarios. That is like the customer's customers thinking of how do you drive up revenue. A lot of the new scenarios we're looking at with generative AI is how do I reduce cost? It's not just about increasing revenue. A lot of it is on reducing cost. And that's not the benefits of AI. They can see significant efficiencies in the way they get the same things done. But that is another evolution I think that's going to happen. Right now, reducing costs seems easier because we've shown that it can work.
Yes.
But the bigger value will come when they start generating new revenue with a lot of this AI capabilities as well. And that will happen. With the internet, you saw all these new business models come out, and with Uber and social media and all of that came out because of internet. And those are all revenue drivers. They're not necessarily cost reducers. And I think the same thing is going to happen in the AI space as well. Right now, of course, a lot of the demand, even for you all, I think it's coming from, hey, I do things a certain way, help me reduce the cost even more, and I want to increase my margins. But the next bigger phase is going to come with new business models. That will drive new revenue, that will drive new employment opportunities. That's going to be the next big driver, and it's bound to happen.
Right. Now, on that topic, increasing top of line versus, sort of reducing, sort of the bottom line losses. A lot of, sort of anxiety and fear around, job losses and other things which are related to, sort of, no, it could be these big AI players, sort of seeing something, or it could also be, sort of general part of, sort of the hysteria around. How do you compare and contrast? So when somebody says that, hey, AI here to improve the productivity, are we talking in terms of the GDP growth? Are we talking about individual pockets of industries experiencing productivity, like you're saying? That first phase might be about reducing the cost, but the next phase will be about generating that additional revenue, right? How do we go from here to there? What industry transitions need to happen for us to sort of go out of this thing that, hey, it's not just about sort of efficiency play, but it's also about revenue growth? Where do you see that happen? Do you see in some industries where there is some early vision into that?
And I think, to that, we are seeing the momentum that we had before on revenue growth continuing. It's just that, the new business opportunities, new revenue opportunities with AI, it's still there, it's still growing, but the pace of growth of the productivity scenarios is much, much higher. And, it's both. I see that they are not exclusive. They're not even serialized. They'll both happen in parallel. It's just that here the technology is much more mature for a lot of productivity scenarios because you could have a human in the loop. Easy to put a human in the loop while adopting it. For customer facing scenarios, it's not always easy. Yeah, for customer service it is, but then again, you can think of customer service as a productivity scenario, right? It's all internal. For the external ones, customer facing, I think the multimodal scenarios are very, very interesting, especially with images and videos and things you could do there, because those are new revenue drivers. You can see some very, very interesting things happening there. And I think, this is where every enterprise would then have to think of what is their value in bringing new revenue streams through this. Like, what is internet was a new channel for every enterprise. You could go online to sell. AI opens up a new channel for every enterprise. Now, what is that? If you think of it as a new channel, how do you use it? Like, is it an agent? Do I sell an agent as another product? Will customers pay more? Or is it a chatbot? Now, people have to start thinking in terms of those new channels and start experimenting. But those will happen. So, new channel means new revenue streams. And that is something someone will have to come up with. Of course, you need a reliable AI for it because now, but it's bound to happen. Once you can start doing commercial transactions on it, you're opening it up for these kind of, like you had an online presence, you'd have an AI presence, or maybe it'll merge an online AI presence, but that's what will be the high value product from every customer, be it finance. Think of it like an AI chatbot in finance to approve your loans, to for your banking, for everything else, for your investment scenarios. I want, I have X amount of money. Where should I put my money? Come up with it, do my transaction, keep doing it. Like how many of us are day traders? Very few. We just don't know how to do it. We don't have time. We really don't think it can be solved with AI. AI can do a much better job day trading, right? So these are the new products. People will just have to think outside the box and start thinking in terms of these AI products and take them to market. And the people playing in that space, I think, will win. This is an area for startups. I think they should just be in this space, create those products, because that's the innovation, the ingenuity that the world needs. Because that's good for the enterprises, good for the world. It'll create new products, new employment opportunities. It will increase the GDP because of that.
And on the topic of we spoke about taking agents from the idea phase to production. You spoke about, new kinds of capabilities that are coming in from a chat perspective or agent perspective or startups building new ideas. We've seen a lot of times that in this space where the POCs are amazing, the demos go really well, and we see leaders very excited about, hey, yeah, my team built this. And then, you check back with them a few weeks or months later, and they say, yeah, I mean, it was working in some scenarios, but it is still sort of taking time to take it to production. What is fundamentally at the heart of why this is happening, why we are seeing more and more of this, that there is a gap between when features used to be announced by large companies or even a small company, when they say something, hey, here's an announcement, you would expect that, yeah, oh wow, it's working in beta phase, so we should expect the GA and the sort of the broad release to follow within a couple of quarters. But AI has sort of pushed that. There's a huge gap between ideas and POCR versus various production. What has fundamentally changed in software development, and what can more sort of like the scientific folks do to help the engineers bridge that gap? So what can be done there?
Yeah, this is a great question, right? And uh, you would think that on the one hand, we need to acknowledge that the development cycle has become much smaller, much shorter with AI, with coding. By not really vibe coding is good for prototyping, but even building certain things with vibe coding or with just AI for coding, everyone uses it. If someone's not using it, you know, I think they're living in another age. But everyone has been using it, and that has significantly reduced the development cycles. But at the same time, a lot of the things are in prototype. Now, prototypes are two different kinds. One is because the code was written in a prototypey way, but the other thing is that, people don't, and this is where product building becomes so important. Like, having the right AI product management. The product management is not the way it used to be before, where I write a PRD and it's done. Here, you have to understand the customer, because every AI PM is creating a new product. You have to start thinking in terms of what the customer will use and define it and adapt and learn. Because a lot of times it's the first time you're presenting them with something. And that you need to keep iterating. A single time just pushing things out is not the way things work. And that is a cycle that many companies and many software developers are trying to learn. What is this fast iteration cycle? It's not just about shipping something, but ship, learn, design, ship. That entire loop needs, it's a loop now. It's not like, the early days when we all used to be working on Windows and stuff. It was a 3-year cycle or even a 6-month cycle. None of that works. It's a continuous loop, and we need to iterate. And I think this is where, if you asked of tooling, I think tooling needs to be in the entire loop, every stage of the loop, and making sense of the loop. That is, how do you ship faster? How do you gather customer feedback? How do you use it to redesign? And how do you use it to re-implement and ship something out? Every instance needs a tool, and it's an optimization across all of them to capture using AI to make sure that you're quickly iterating on it and shipping the right set of products. And I think we are in this phase where everyone will have to, because there's so many variances, right? It's not just the loop itself, because there are things outside the loop that are happening which are outside of our control, like the people are doing it, like model improvements. Suddenly a new model capability came out, or a new SDK came out, or some other competitor did something that's going to change the loop faster or make things happen. So that's one of the things we are seeing. And the entire loop is going to be much more dynamic. Things are in beta and alpha much longer, and seeing a lot more change than what earlier used to happen. Because earlier it would be, the product owner, the PM writes a PRD, the product requirements doc. That's the same part of the features I've shipped. The rest of it will ship over time. It goes from alpha to beta to GA. That's not the case anymore. Your PRD is dynamic. If your PRD is not dynamic, I think the PM is not doing a great job. They need to be on top of what the customers want, learn by giving it to the customers, and keep on iterating. So that is one of the things that's happening. And tooling, I think, is needed across the entire thing. But the other part is also, you want to graduate. You want to have some exit criteria saying, this is what we need. This is a time when we start, because when it's in preview, you're not really pricing much, right? It's like toy pricing. To figure out, even that's another reason why things are taking longer, because you want to know how much value they create, which goes back to how you price the product. The other way of approaching this is through FTEs, and I think that's the model, which is really really impressive. Where and it's needed. You need people sitting on board with the customer, making sure that it really lands with them, right? So it's not just a go figure, but I'll understand things, how you work, and adapt it so that you really get value out of it. So I think that's the other approach, which it's mostly human and AI assisted. I don't know what the future is, but at least right now, in the current moment, the FD approach seems to be resonating quite well with customers.
On that note, we've initially thought that AI might go after software, but it seems to be going after services more than anything else, right? We're seeing this shift where services companies that used to build sort of bespoke solutions for companies now sort of they are the ones who feel more threatened by AI rather than more traditional software players, because software players, they're like, okay, yeah, I mean, this is a new interface, like you said, hey, this is a new way of doing our work. Instead of going to the platform which gave me a certain kind of software, I'm just going to do it through Copilot, and Copilot understands how to use that piece of software for me. So you're sort of getting value out of that subscription anyway. But we're seeing that for folks who don't have a solution out there, they have to build a bespoke solution. And seems like AI has sort of completely taken over that space where think, hey, building solutions is easy. Let me just do that for you, right? Here's a piece of workflow that your internal engineer can build within a week, as opposed to going to the solution provider who's just quoted you $500,000 in 6 months of work. So how do we see this whole thing evolving? You mentioned forward deployed engineer, which is sort of more like a services play, right? Hey, here's an engineer who's going to do this for you, as opposed to here's a piece of software that you can use. Is this a new category that is evolving, or is the FDE more in alignment with the software side or the services side? What are your thoughts on it?
So, this is over the last couple of years, this function has really taken off. It's a way to deliver value to the customer. This is like, if you think of it, high end computer science talent, AI talent, who'll go deliver value for the customer. You can think of AI talent who go works with the customer, because it's hard for every enterprise to even hire this kind of talent. And so that's why this is like, I don't see it easily replaceable with AI either. You might be able to reduce the number of FTEs needed, but such high end talent, because, right now, what is the biggest challenge? I think the reason is that every enterprise's data and the way they work is not super well organized. It's all over the place. To make sense of that data and the workflows right now requires it. But now if you say, hey, a few years down the line, will AI do it? Probably. Right now, you need people who are deep experts to understand, make sense, and bring the data and workflows together so that the rest of the pipeline can kick in and make value and bring value on top of it.
Got it.
So, but yeah, now in the future, we don't know what all AI can do, but at least in this point of time, it's something that you need experts. And that's the place where I think FDs, that's a sweet spot for a deployed engineer.
Somebody who
It's not
embeds into
just any consulting firm doing it. It's got to be someone who understands your tech, who understands your solutions, the way you handle data, because those are the ones who are the most efficient.
Right. Suddenly seems like a new category of engineer that we have not seen before. They need to understand. It's not like, it's not something that the customer, needs to do, but doesn't want to do. It's something that they want to do and they need to do, which means that they have to bring in the best of the best, because they have to understand how the business works and then start agentifying that, core process, or at least bring those capabilities to an agentic framework.
Yeah. Very true.
And on that note, sort of we're seeing, other trends in the industry, right? We used to pay for software, once, and then we use it for 5 years, and evolved into subscriptions where we pay it for software every month, right? Now it seems to be emerging into a mode where you pay per use, right? I ask you a question, it charges me for that question. Like, how many tokens did the question cost? How many tokens did it, how many, sort of tokens did I generate, right? So it seems to be like, more and more customers expect this. Why am I paying you a monthly fee, right? Like, you're just a chat completion API. You're an agent. So why don't you just, charge me per, tokens input and output and per data? How does this impact, revenue cycles? And how does this impact how software companies need to think about in the future? There are some folks who already play this way, rather than subscriptions, they make most of their money through consumption of tokens, the new age LLM players, for instance. But for the more traditional software players or even software startups, what does this mean?
Yeah, and this all I would say is that be agile in the way you're going to price things. Because it's the value of AI people are still uncovering when and how much. Like, is it a flat fee or is it the use case? Like, am I using it for a very high value use case or am I using it to tell jokes? Now, the price you'd pay for both of those are very different. And this is a market, like if I'm thinking of startups, depending on what you're trying to do, you will want to price it differently based on the value that it is creating. So I think that's one thing that every enterprise needs to ask. And for Microsoft itself, we have Copilot, which is a monthly fee. We have Copilot Studio, which is a per charge fee. We every time you make calls with agents, you're paying different. You have Azure, which is again different pricing. But then Microsoft is a different company, right? It's a much bigger company. We work at different scale. For startups, this is a very interesting question. I would suggest that just go after the value that you're creating and use that to decide. You could even price it at, like depending on what you're doing, it could even be per call, but still be priced high because you're creating that much value per call. And it could be even because you do a lot of compute behind the scenes. You go and you fire off, you do a lot of compute, and then you come back with an answer, or you're running some things in the background in a instead of reactive in a proactive way, running in the background and coming up with results and insights. And those things can get expensive. And if you're creating, but that would be not an like eventually boils down to how much value you're creating. I think that's the main determinant, along with the other aspects of what's the cogs and everything else to determine and what the play is. Is it a direct go to market? Is it a partnership go to market? There's so many factors. And as I said earlier, like AI is a new channel for companies. AI is also, people are still figuring out how do you even price things, but based on how much what's the cost, based on value, based on other aspects. So to answer your question, I don't have an answer here. All I would say is, just go after how much value you're creating and do it with the predictions of where AI is headed as well. That is because this field is evolving so fast. Earlier, people would build on what the capabilities are now. Now, people have to not just look at that, but look at what capabilities are likely to get developed as you're building something in. Uh, like,
All right. So yeah. So one question I wanted to sort of ask is, do you have like a favorite area where agents are doing a lot of work, or a favorite agentic project, or a space where agents are doing something that feels sort of close to your heart? Just wanted to understand. Yeah.
So in a space, of course, there's a lot of work my team's been doing on financial services, healthcare. These we are working with customers and seeing quite a bit of value coming out of it. So that's just so heartening to see the value created. But of course, if you ask me, what the answer would be. I get excited about anything to do with food and agriculture. And there we are doing some stuff as well with food and agriculture companies. The one place which I get excited about is anything to do with emerging markets. Like if you do it, we did this project in Baramati in India with smallholder farmers. And all the work we are doing, if it doesn't impact everyone in the world, I think we are not doing our job well. That is, and we've been through this. We've been through the evolution of the internet and the creation of the digital divide. And I think everyone working in the tech space, be it a technology person, a business person, or a policymaker, everyone should own the responsibility for the digital divide. That is, over 2 billion people are not connected to the internet. Now we are going through the AI phase. If we don't do things right, it'll be a similar AI divide. The same, the set of people around the world will get no benefits from it, and the gap will become much worse. So it's upon us to bridge that gap. And one of the places which is close to my heart where I see a lot of the divide is agriculture and farming. And if these farmers won't benefit with the work we are doing, I don't think many of us, it'll be a disappointment to have all of us working in this space. So personally, for example, I'm involved in the Paramati project. I've been talked to the Maharashtra government. They've come up with a Maharashtra AI policy, significantly influenced by the work that we did in Paramati, where we showed that farmers significantly benefit with the use of AI and agentic systems. So it's still the very start, but that's a part I find very heartening, where the technologies that we build is getting to the people all over the world. And the other one similar to that was this one you were involved with as well, with there's a Farm Beats for Students. We created this kit to skill rural communities with data and AI. So we built it back then. Since then, it has taken off. As of a few months ago, now we announced the availability to all high schools. It's a partnership with the FFA and 4H, where all rural high schools are going to be taught AI and data using Palm Beach for students. So that's a huge impact of the work we've been doing. So those are the ones which, I that adds meaning to the work I do. Every day I come to work, that's what drives me. That's what keeps me going.
Thank you for being on the podcast today. I learned a lot, and I'm sure our viewers did learn a lot too. We hope to have you again sometime on the podcast. Maybe next year when you have more exciting updates. Thank you.
Good luck. Great stuff. You're all doing awesome stuff. Good luck. Thanks for having me. Bye.